Pa'y batat mandalay.
March is a month of striking heroic feats in Eritrea's glorious struggle for independence. It was 25 years ago, on March 17 to 19, 1988, that the EPLF forces dealt once and for all a blowing defeat through a 72-hour military operation to a special enemy command, otherwise known as the NATO-IS, which had constituted a significant portion of the Ethiopian Derg army. Obliteration of the 100-kilometer-long, well-fortified front line of colonial Ethiopia's army at Nakfa ushered in the EPLF's transition from years of revolutionary standoff to strategic military offensive, thereby penetrating 70 kilometers deep into the enemy-held territory from Hudai to Meshalit. The victory over the NATO command is considered by the historian Basil Davidson to be the most significant victory for any liberation movement since the Vietnamese victory at Dien Bien Phu. It has also been described as the largest battle in Africa since El Alamein.
At that time, a great historian, a scholar, especially a scholar of the African liberation movements, was there present in the field. He is Basil Davidson. He was a good friend of Eritrea, a good friend of the EPLF, because he was one of the people interested in knowing about the EPLF liberation philosophy, which was to liberate the land and the man step by step. People were fascinated by this philosophy, by this model of, which was a new model in the African independence struggles. So Basil Davidson was there, and as you said, he compared the defeat of the Ethiopian forces in Afabe to the Dien Bien Phu in Vietnam, where the French built a fortress. They thought it was not, it was not attackable. But the Vietnamese forces, with their leader, General Giap, they attacked, and the French were stuck there. And after 57 days, the French gave up, and they were ready to withdraw and to sign a peace agreement. In history, this is known as the turning point. And when Basil Davidson compared Afabe to Dien Bien Phu, this means that it was a historic event, especially for us Eritreans, because it was a major victory, a major achievement after a long period between the strategic withdrawal and the Afabe event. It was the most important victory by the EPLF.
Mr. Basil Davidson, it's a pleasure to have you here in our liberated Eritrea. It's great of you to come here.
Thank you very much.
Well, how long have you been in Eritrea, and which places did you visit?
I've been in Eritrea, in free Eritrea, in liberated Eritrea for about 16 days. And I have visited many of the civilian departments of the EPLF, including those concerned with education, those concerned with agriculture, those concerned with medical care. I have talked to the people on numerous occasions about the structures of their daily life, the political life which you are introducing, the concept of participation. I have also been here, I must say, by accident. I didn't know it was going to happen at the moment of your great offensive. And so I have been able to hear a good deal about that and to witness, if at a distance, some of the great achievements, great military achievements, which you have scored here in Eritrea in the last 3 or 4 days.
Of all the things you saw and places you visited in Eritrea, what impressed you most?
Well, many things, but I think that generally I was impressed by the way in which you have made a strength out of your environment. The environment here, you live in rocky hills, you live in places without much apparent water, little vegetation, but you have managed to make a strength out of all that. That's one thing. Another thing I found at such places as the Revolution School and at such villages as Adshek, I found a great sense of community, a sense of companionship, a sense of mutual solidarity in suffering, yes, but also in the struggle against the Ethiopian occupation and all its consequences.
You have written a lot about national liberation movements in Africa and also about Africa, and you have had a direct experience in almost, I could say, national liberation movements in Africa, like Guinea-Bissau, Angola, Cape Verde, Mozambique, Algeria. How do you assess the Eritrean national struggle vis-à-vis this national liberation movement?
Well, I think it brings me to my third point that strikes me, of course, and that is the relatively very advanced technological and organizational level which you have achieved. In these respects, it seems to me that this is certainly by far the most advanced, intellectually the best equipped of all the liberation movements that I have known in Africa over the past 30 years and more. Possibly it might be argued that the Viet Minh and then the Viet Cong were at your level. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But so far as Africa is concerned, I have no doubt that the experience of the EPLF historically will be in the center of the picture of the whole story of the struggles against the colonial systems.
A lot of reporters and visitors talk about the efficiency and organizational solidarity and solidness, of the EPLF. What's your observation of this fact?
Yes, it seems to me to be at a very high level, both in terms of organizational capacity and also in terms of community solidarity. That seems to be certainly to be the case. I have no doubt about that at all. It must be said that other liberation movements also achieved a great sense of solidarity. They couldn't have survived without it. So I think you share that with all the others, even if yours is quite remarkably advanced. I think that the other thing that strikes me very much about your movement, your front, is so far as I've been able to talk to your leaders, and that is quite far, how practical and how sensible your political approach is to the really great problems which exist in this region of the continent.
الفضائية الإريترية من أجل الحقيقة.
By the achievements of the EPLF and its effort to ascertain equality of women. What is your observation of this, the role of women in Eritrea?
Yes, well, I can't speak of that in detail, but obviously the women fighters and the women organizational personnel that I have seen and met, whether at one level or another, are very impressive, and there, of course, you are far ahead of any other liberation movement there has ever been, with the possible exception of the Viet Minh. Nothing in Africa could even, has ever been able to compete with the degree in which you'll be able to break through the traditional male superiority, domination, machismo, which has been very common, is still very common throughout this continent, and indeed not only in this continent.
How do you assess the strengths and the military power of the EPLF?
Well, I can't make any judgment about that, but I simply go on the events, on the evidence of the last few days. The last few days have proved that the EPLF is a highly superior force, both in terms of morale, in terms of tactical efficiency, because this clearly was a great encirclement maneuver. Of course, I don't know the details, but it clearly was. And in terms of morale, I said that, but also in terms of capacity to use modern weapons. You have captured some extraordinary weapons in the past, and I have seen in use or in position heavy artillery, which you've taken from the enemy, tanks in plenty. Now you'll have, I'm sure, plenty more, which you've taken from the enemy. And this is a level which no other liberation in movement in this part of the world, in the Western Hemisphere, let alone Africa, has ever been able to achieve. Nothing like that has existed in any part of Latin America, and nothing like it until now has existed in Africa. So I have no doubt at all that you will triumph in this struggle, and I hope that this triumph can come soon, so that the sufferings may be shortened.
What did you feel when you heard the news, the liberation of Afabe, that you were present? I would say we were lucky enough to have you here when this historic achievements by Eritrean People's Liberation Army was achieved. And how did you receive the news? How was it, at that particular moment?
I was very, very pleased, and not simply because it is the victory of those whom I regard as my friends, but because the only way in which this war will be ended is by your victory. There is no other means of handling this situation. So the more victories you can score, and the bigger they are, the better all of us who are better, I and all my friends will be pleased. So I felt great joy, and I'm quite certain that all my friends back at home similarly felt great joy, not because of the suffering and the dead and all the rest of it. All that is very tragic and all that is very deplorable. But it wasn't you who invited the war, after all. It wasn't you who asked the Ethiopians to annex your country. It wasn't you who wished to be a colony. So clearly the blame lies with those who've not been able to solve the problem, and the blame therefore lies very squarely with the Derg, whether this Derg or the one before it, or Haile Selassie before him.
3,000 years. But you, as a prominent historian, a man of authority on African history, what's your opinion on this Ethiopian claim on Eritrea?
Well, the claim is utterly worthless. Utterly worthless. It has no historical significance at all. It is a legend, which they like to believe. They like to say that they are the inheritors of the Empire of Aksum. The Empire of Aksum ended in the 8th or 9th century AD. All right, even if we accept, which I do not, that they are the inheritors of the Empire of Aksum, let us remember, this is a long time ago, and the French in 1066 invaded my country and conquered it. Are we therefore now to say that England is part of France? Nobody is going to believe that. It is as foolish as that. It is a silly myth.
Do you envisage, as you, a man of experience about national liberation movements, the emergence of independent Eritrea?
Yes,
in the Horn of Africa?
I believe it has already emerged. I have been living in it for 2 weeks. And this will continue. And this remarkable military success which you've scored over those whom we have to call the Ethiopian occupying forces. That's the only way in which you can define them, in my judgment. This confirms it. This confirms it. Circumstances, of course, I don't know, but it will happen, yes.
Do you have any message to convey to the people of the world, in particular to the African people pertaining the Eritrean cause?
Yes, I do. Insofar as I have any influence amongst those who listen to me, especially perhaps those in my own country, and I hope those in Africa, it is past time that the world took notice of the realities in the Horn of Africa. And the realities are, one, that Eritrea is not, and has not been, and certainly will not be, a province of the Ethiopian Empire State. That the EPLF, the national fighters of Eritrea, these are not rebels. These are nationalists fighting for a nationalist cause, just as all the other nationalist causes we have seen in the past 30 years have been. This is an anti-colonial struggle at base. There's no doubt at all about that. Africa should wake up to this. Africa should open its eyes to what is happening. The major powers should realize that the only way in which peace will come is by a just settlement here, and a just settlement cannot be in favor of this Mengistu Derg or any other Derg like it. There has to be a democratization of the Ethiopian Empire State, such as was promised way back in 1974 when Haile Selassie was removed from the throne. This democratization did not come about, and we know what's happened. It isn't only that there is conflict here in Eritrea, but you know as well as I do there is conflict in a dozen other places. These conflicts cannot be resolved by force. They can only be resolved by democratization of the Ethiopian Empire State, and that means, one, the recognition of the right of the Eritrean people to independence, whatever they decide to do with that, their right. And two, the recognition of the centrality of the nationality conflicts inside Ethiopia proper, inside traditional Ethiopia, not including Eritrea, needless to say. And also, we must say, with the neighboring states, I think of Somalia, there is an extremely difficult conflict concerning the Ogaden. That has to be resolved in a friendly way. There may be one with the Sudan, I don't know. But whatever the peripheral conflicts are, they must be resolved. And this is a two-point program which the world must recognize is the only road to peace. And I think it is shameful. I think it is shameful that the OAU, so far, has not lifted a finger to recognize the realities of the situation here. And I can only hope that these victories, which you have now proved your existence, proved your worth, and proved your future, will bring the world to understand this, and will bring the OAU to confront this problem squarely at last.
Would you like to convey a message or make a statement to the Eritrean people?
Well, I don't feel important enough to do that. I did the first message because I spent my life studying Africa. I only would say to the Eritrean people, congratulations, your cause is just. Accept the situation and continue to win. Continue to win, and please, as rapidly as you can. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to our liberated area, Mr. Basil Davidson. Thank you for the interview. If you have some more things to add, please feel free to do so, and thank you again.
Thank you so much. I feel very free and liberated myself in free Eritrea, and at the moment I don't have anything more to say, but no doubt in the future I shall. Thank you.
حياة انت من بدير كاب امان 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 اجحكا وابايكا يتصنو عزيمة وادك حلق حما حياة انت عزيمة حياة انت حياة انت حياة انت عوديك هتكبك كما نواي كارف يودش باي والطيبة